Good afternoon, everybody. We're going to give just a couple more seconds as folks are joining the webinar for today. Looking forward to this second session for the Genesis Mission Phase 1 opportunity. All right, I believe we are ready to get started. Can we go to the next slide, please? Again, welcome everyone to today's webinar for the SBIR Genesis Mission Phase 1 topic. For some of you, if you're joining us again, welcome back from last week's session. We're excited to continue the conversation and provide updates and information to you to help you prepare for this solicitation. This slide really highlights some of our key program team members on the call today. My name is Grayson Dorr. I serve as the program manager for ConnectWorks. We have a number of our staff joining as well as we work as one of the partnership intermediaries with the Department of Energy. Along with me today, helping facilitate some of our Q&A session as well as various topics is Kelsey Hamilton. And again, you'll see we'll be joined by Eileen Chant. She'll follow immediately after me, and then other team members you see here. Again, just noting, we'll provide our contact information. We've had questions in the past about directly reaching out. We will help facilitate those follow-ups should there be any need for assistance from any of the team members. So again, we won't be providing direct contact, and obviously with the interest of bandwidth and capacity during this high interest period. Next slide. A couple meeting housekeeping items. Again, if you joined us last week, it'll be a slight change from our format from last. This session will be recorded again, and the slides, transcript, and recording will be posted to the Application Hub website. You all will be muted for the entirety of this webinar. If for whatever reason you're having any audio issues or technical difficulties, please just use the chat feature. If you're using the chat feature for questions, we will not be monitoring those. We will ask once we get to the Q&A portion that you use the QR code and or link to supply your questions so that we can look at those and go in order. There will be a brief survey to close. And again, we thank you all. We had a great turnout and great participation last week in survey responses. So that is very helpful for us to do so. Before I do go to the next slide, I failed to mention on the last, this session will be an hour. The program managers will not be in attendance this week. We will encourage everyone to go back and view the recording from last week and the slides when that is available to look at the various topic and discussions there. Should there be any questions pertaining to that, we're happy to still facilitate responses and reach out to them. But the focus today will be on the from OTC and ConnectWorks on the actual application side, as well as the structure of the program as well. Next slide. Again, just to recap for those that are new, ConnectWorks is one of the partnership intermediaries with the Office of Technology Commercialization, operating on behalf of a partnership intermediary agreement. So we have published opportunities in the past with DOE on our core ConnectWorks side, so encourage you to visit that on the next slide, as well as some of our resources we'll have available. Next slide. And again, those resources I mentioned, we encourage you to follow us on LinkedIn. If you have not joined already, we have an SBIR mailing list, really hyper-focused on announcements, closings. We commit to not flooding your inbox with unnecessary information, but really keeping that focus to releases and such. That email address that I mentioned, the SBIR-STTR at ConnectWorks, is a great way to get in touch with us. Again, we had a number of questions submitted as follow-up to that last week, and continuously monitor that box. Again, you see our mission across is really to engage, match, and collaborate with the DOE to address these key challenges. And a great way to connect with us, we will be at Tech Connect. Tech Connect is a division, if you will, of ConnectWorks. We will be at the Fall SBIR Innovation Conference next month, and you can stop by and see us at booth 615 if you are in the area or attending at the Gaylord. So with that, I will turn it over to Eileen to kick us off again. And thank you again, everyone, for joining us today.
Hi, everybody. Happy to be here and talk to you about SBIR, STTR. We can go to the next slide. And to the next slide. Okay, so just a brief slide, kind of about SBIR and STTR programs. SBIR is a tax on agencies' extramural R&D. All agencies that spend over a certain amount of money on extramural R&D must spend 3.2% on their R&D budget on the SBIR program. And other agencies, the larger 6 of the 11 agencies that offer an SBIR program must also, based on their size, offer an STTR program, which is 0.45% of extramural R&D. So that means that DOE contributes 3.65% of its extramural R&D to this program, which comes to about $250 or $300 million a year in awards. The goals of the program are to enable small businesses to conduct research and development with the aim of the technology development work to be commercialization of a product. It's not R&D for the sake of R&D. And we also must fund, DOE and the other agencies must fund projects that help advance a mission. So the sweet spot is commercializing your technology and advancing a mission area of the Department of Energy. On the left side, I have, you see the phased structure of the program. Phase 1 is your entry point into the program. It's a smaller award. It's a feasibility study. A successful phase 1 project will move into phase 2, which is about demonstrating your technology, executing your commercialization strategy, and you can move on to receive additional phase 2 awards, a second phase 2 award, and a third phase 2 award. Okay, we'll go to the next slide. We are the 3rd largest agency after the Department of War and the Health and Human Services. Again, our program is about $300 million a year, and there are 13 program offices that participate in SBIR, STTR, and that number actually fluctuates a little bit from one year to another as offices are stood up and reorganized and combined. But you can see on the left side the program offices, and it kind of tells you all the very different areas that DOE is funding. Technologies in applied areas such as nuclear energy, cybersecurity, energy innovation, and then the Office of Science are the offices at the bottom. And this particular Genesis program is about is funding from the Offices of Science. Next slide. Okay, so number 1, you're here, you're probably interested in preparing your pitch to apply for this program, but just make sure that you review the eligibility requirements for SBIR, STTR programs, because you don't want to spend your time putting together a pitch and then an application and find out that you're not eligible. You must be a for-profit business. Now, any of the sort of generally recognized business structures are recognized. So you can be an LLC, you can be a corporation, a sole proprietorship, etc. And you must be for profit. You must be located in the United States. Your small business must be at least 51% controlled and owned by individuals who are citizens or permanent residents of the United States. Or you can be owned by another for-profit small business that has that same ownership criteria associated with it. As far as venture capital requirements are concerned, we do allow some venture capital ownership in for our awardees. However, if you're majority owned by a venture capital company that is a large business, you are not eligible. So go take a deep dive into the eligibility requirements. If you have some venture capital ownership, there's some nuances there, and make sure that you are eligible. The small business is liberally defined as 500 employees or fewer. And very importantly, all research and development that's paid for with the SBIR or STTR dollars must be performed entirely within the United States. Next slide. The principal investigator of your project must be primarily employed by the small business, which means they spend more than 50% of their employment hours working at the small business. And please pay attention to the performance of work requirements. There is a minimum level of effort. We're talking about phase 1 here. Your proposing small business must perform 2/3 of the research and development for SBIR. That means that 1/3 of your work can be contracted out. Now, when you're designing your plan, your work plan, who's going to do what, you may find that you need subcontractors. You might need a subject matter expert or other types of technology experts to work on your project or conduct R&D, a laboratory, etc. But the small business must perform at least 2/3, and it can perform 100% of the R&D. But you have to structure your effort around what it is that your project needs in order to adequately execute your feasibility study. Next slide. And then if you are applying to STTR, please take note that there are some differences in terms of the principal investigator requirements are that the PI can be primarily employed by the small business, but they can also primarily be employed by the nonprofit research institution. Now, note that a nonprofit research institution is a requirement for the STTR program. You must have such an entity as part of your project, and they must do 30% of the R&D as part of the level of effort requirements. The small business must do 40% of the R&D for STTR. So that means 30% is sort of up for grabs, depending on what makes sense. Other subcontractors, the research institution or the small business can conduct the balance of the R&D. You do want to make sure that before you receive your award, that you execute an intellectual property agreement with the research institution, and that the agreement is clear as a bell in terms of who retains rights to the intellectual property developed during the award. Next slide. There's a pitch. It's due on September 10th. You can review the information on the website, and you can download the template. There are 4 questions to answer as part of your pitch. And your pitch is due on September 10th. We're here at the 812 webinar right now. The application portal will open tomorrow on Thursday, August 13th. Again, your pitches are due at 2 p.m. on September 10th. Next slide. Okay, so the core program is as follows. You apply through the phase 1. That's a feasibility study. The awards are up to $250,000. It's a feasibility study, so your phase 1 application should be couched as a feasibility study. What it is you're trying to figure out is feasible. You execute that project over 6 to 12 months. If your project is successful, you'll move to phase 2. There's a second phase 2 award. And if those projects are successful, a small number of awardees will move on to what's a newly authorized program called Strategic Breakthrough, which can be a much larger award. The phase 2 awards are up to 2 million. The Strategic Breakthrough can be a much larger award, and these are going to be projects that are of significant strategic significance to DOE. Phase 3 refers to moving out of the world of SBIR funding and receiving funding from somewhere else, non-SBIR, non-STTR. That could be investors, it could be customers, and it could be a federal funding as well too, that pays a federal agency that pays you to continue your R&D. Next slide. Here are the 4 sections of the pitch. Okay, I won't go through all of the details here, but there's 4 sections. Mission, you have to state what your topic is. There's 4 topics in this solicitation, and please clearly describe how your project aligns with the topic area. What is the technical promise of your innovation? It should be novel, it should be significant, and it should be you should be able to describe why this effort is feasible, what it is that you're trying to do is feasible. There's commercialization potential, so you have to have a early stage idea of who your market is at this point, who your market is going to be, how you are going to go to market, and what are your competitors doing, what makes your technology better, and why somebody is going to buy it. And then finally, you have to describe your team qualifications, because we want to ensure that you have a team that's well-rounded and can complete the work that is required as part of your feasibility study. Next slide. Okay, the pitches are reviewed and only invited pitches. So the pitch is a gate now. That's a new aspect of the program. Only invited pitches are able to submit a full application. We do have here a description of the application, technical merit review criteria. So you'll have more real estate, more paper to describe the technical promise, the commercialization potential, and the team qualifications in your project narrative and your commercialization plan that's submitted with your application. Next slide. I just want to mention that if you are working on a project that requires high performance computing support, we have those resources at DOE. They are free of charge to you. You just need to apply. Once you become an awardee, you need to apply for those those computing resources in sort of either CPU time or GPU time through our National Energy Research Scientific Computing Center, NERSC. The links are here on this slide. So keep that in mind if you have those requirements. Next slide. And I will hand it back over to Grayson. Thank you.
Thank you, Eileen, for that great update. And just as a reminder for everyone, we put some helpful links as Eileen was going through in the chat as well. One of the key things before I turn it over, and just as a reminder for this portion, we will both post the link to the QA in the chat right now, as well as a QR code if you'd like to scan it as well. So again, thank you, Eileen. With that, I will turn it over to you, Kelsey, and we can jump right into this next portion.
Yeah, thanks again for that reminder, Grayson. We are getting some people dropping questions in the chat. I would just like us to reserve the chat function for those who are having technical difficulties so we don't lose them. We just dropped a link for Vivox, which is the tool you'll be using for Q&A. So that will open for question submissions shortly. But please, first, we're going to go through a couple slides on just the application process and AMP, because that's new to everyone. And hopefully we will answer some of those questions you may have before we even get to the Q&A. Next slide, please. All right, so we are using what we're calling the AMP application portal to collect your pitch applications. You will need to access or to request access to AMP. The form is available on our website. We'll drop it in the chat. but it is also on this slide. So it's going to be register.ati.org, and when you visit, you will see this form. You're able to put in your account details. So please, it should be an individual registering, so your name and your email address, not a generic company email. This is very important. You also will be prompted to select a program, and you should be selecting SBIR STTR as shown on this slide. Next slide. Right. So right now, if you have requested access and you log into the AMP application portal, this is what you will see. It will say no results found because we have not opened the application. We were giving people an opportunity to request access and get going, but we're excited to announce that applications will be opening for submissions tomorrow. So we will send out an email as soon as that opens, as well as post a resource guide with some of the frequently asked questions or hiccups that you may have while trying to access the application in AMP. But again, this is what it would look like if you already have access and log on today. But as soon as applications open, next slide, please. You'll see something like this, where there will be an open solicitation for which you are able to respond. I would just note that that bottom section, the to-do list, will show 0 pending tasks until you have drafted a submission. So once you draft your first pitch application submission, as you know, that will show up in a to-do list as a pending pitch submission. Next slide. Another very useful screen grab we wanted to get in this deck is of the submissions tab within AMP. So here you will be able to view any pitch submissions you have started. As you can see, we took this example. It has 3 pitch applications, one of which is showing that it's withdrawn, one is in draft, and one is submitted. Please use that status column. That can be very important. So DOE will accept up to 3 pitches per company for this opportunity. And if more than 3 are submitted, only the last 3 submitted pitches by timestamp will be reviewed. So therefore, we encourage you to use this submissions tab to view how many you have pending, ensure the ones you want are submitted, and ones that you don't want reviewed are withdrawn, just to avoid any confusion as to what will be reviewed by DOE. So as a reminder, draft submissions will not be able to be submitted past the submission deadline. So make sure you're going in there before September 10th, ensuring anything you want submitted says submitted, and anything you don't want submitted says withdrawn. Please make our job easy and have only 3 submissions per company, because if not, we will be forced to only review the final 3 submissions from your company. The last thing I'll say is you can edit one that says submitted up until the submission deadline. So we do encourage you to submit early. You can submit early and then go in and still make edits to your submission. But what we cannot do is enable you to submit a draft if you forgot to push that button before the deadline. Next slide. All right. And then before we get into Q&A, I would just do one final plug. Please fill out our survey. We had an incredible response rate to our webinar survey last week. Would love to get more today. We have 4 questions. So of the topic areas, you'll be asked to submit how many pitches you planned to submit per topic. So just as a reminder, across those topics, your total should be no more than 3, but you can do all 3 to one topic area, 2 to one to another. But again, it should sum to 3. If you don't plan on submitting a pitch, feel free to select 0 for all 4 topic areas, and we added an open text box so you can tell us why that might be, as well as an open text box for any feedback for our team. So again, thank you for joining us, and please help us help you. Next slide. All right, we'll be going into the Q&A portion of the webinar. So please go ahead and take out your phones and scan this QR code. If you do not have a QR code scanner camera at the ready, we'll drop a link in the chat as well. You will use this program to submit your questions. So next slide. Thank you, Brooke. The link is now in the chat. So just some reminders as you start putting your questions in. We are going to be reviewing the questions as they come in. They will be published so you can view them as soon as they are published. Please go in and upvote the questions you want answers to. That will help bring them to the top of the queue so we are more likely to get to the questions of most interest to everybody. If you don't see your question get pushed to the published question board, it's likely for one of the 4 reasons. So we are trying to focus on new questions for this live Q&A while we have our DOE experts on hand. So anything that can be answered by an FAQ on the website, we're going to skip over for now, and someone from the ConnectWorks team will be following up. We will be, pushing the Q&A answers as well as the FAQ resources from our website to the group as we send out a thank you for attending. Another reason might be that it does not pertain specifically to this phase 1 Genesis opportunity. So that is why we're here today. If you are interested in the phase 2 opportunity, please come back next week. If you are an existing awardee with a very specific question, please instead use our email address so we can connect you to the right person. We are going to focus on process and program level questions today since we do not have our topic managers. So we also will be skipping over the topic specific questions today in order to focus on the program level. And please instead email our SBIR/STTR@ConnectWorks so we can connect your question to the right topic manager and get a response to you. One final thing, please do not use our questions and answers to ask about your specific company's eligibility or your idea at this stage. You're encouraged to use this pitch submission to get DOE's feedback on your idea. Standardized feedback for non-selected pitches will be provided, and selected pitches, it's up to the review team to provide feedback that may help with a full application. So the purpose of this pitch is to have a very streamlined entrance to getting your idea in front of DOE, and that's what this submission opportunity is for. We will not be doing that kind of ahead of the pitch submission. So we thank you for your understanding. Okay. And all right. The scoring criteria is on the website. Please visit the application hub, specifically the phase 1 Genesis mission tab, and you will see it there. All right, one question. Can we include well-recognized international scientists based outside the US as advisors in our team section, provided they are not compensated through the award? Would their involvement still be considered a strength to our team?
I can go ahead and answer that. And yes, that is fine and acceptable as long as you're not paying international entities with the SBIR STTR funds. We encourage you to have international collaborators and subject matter experts, as long as, again, and you could even pay them with other funds. You just can't pay them with the SBIR STTR funds.
As are pitches read by DOE as they are submitted, or all after September 10th? When will we hear back about whether a pitch was accepted?
Jump in for this question. So we will be reading all pitches at the same time. It's not a rolling deadline. It's a deadline after which we will read the full set of pitches that come in, and we expect to. The latest timeline is on the website. I don't want to commit to any particular week as to when we might get an answer back, but of course it'll be as soon as we possibly can.
And just jumping in real quick as well, because I know we've seen a lot of questions just around pitch versus full application. Obviously, as soon as those deadlines are provided, we will update the website and reach out if your pitch is selected. But a number of questions pertaining to the actual full application, yes, that will be through AMP as well. A few folks, I think, historically are asking about PAMS and grants.gov. Will that be involved as well? Can you speak to that as far as those that may be familiar with the some older processes?
Grants.gov and PAMS are not involved in the new program. That's part of the legacy. Those were part of the legacy application process. You do have to register for SAM.gov as part of this process, and you do need your registration complete by the time you submit your application. And SAM.gov, it's a multi-step process. You have to, I think, get your UEI, and then you have to get your CAGE code, and there's an IRS verification step as well. So make sure you do that and do it now, like tomorrow. I would start your SAM.gov registration. And you also just want to make sure that your company name in SAM.gov is exactly the same as your company name that it syncs up with your IRS company name as well, because that can cause delays in processing your SAM.gov application request.
All right, thank you both. So if DOE accepts up to 3 pitches per company, is the company limited to only one awarded proposal, provided they get through both the pitch and the full application?
Hypothetically, you could receive up to 3 awards as long as there is no duplication of scope between the awards.
Great, thank you, Ben. If a company has submitted and won SBIR before, would they still have an account and just need AMP access, or does AMP require setting up a new account? So I hope I understand this correctly as a question about whether or not you need a new SAM.gov account, in which case you would not. Please make sure your registration information on SAM is and your UEI are current and ready for the full application. But the AMP portal is new to this opportunity. Once we submit, can we pull the submission back, edit, and then resubmit? Yes, AMP will allow you to edit up until the submission deadline. So even if it says submitted in that status on AMP, you're able to go in and edit and resubmit. Are charts and images allowed in the pitch? No, they are not. The pitch is structured as 4 questions. You can view a resource on the homepage or the opportunity page that will give you a preview of what those questions are and what the word limits are. They are limited right now to text with specific word counts. So we encourage you to actually work offline and get your answers to the tight word count limit and then paste them into AMP when you are ready to submit. How should an applicant determine whether the collaboration is better structured as SBIR or STTR? And how developed does the lab relationship need to be at the pitch stage?
Well, I mean, what you want to do is you want to look at your project and see what you need. You don't want to add a national lab if it makes no sense for your project. If you need that expertise, or the lab has technology that you want to transfer out of the lab, or they are helping you develop your technology, then you should, by all means, team with a national lab or a nonprofit research institution. So you're going to have to look at what your work scope is, how much of it should be structured to go to a lab or an academic institution, and then look at which program, SBR, STTR, makes sense in terms of the level of effort. And then also the PI is an important consideration as well too. If the principal investigator is with the nonprofit research institution, you have to apply for STTR. Now note, if you fulfill the requirements of both programs, you can apply to both programs. You can apply for both SPR and STTR, which is recommended if you do fulfill those requirements, because those are 2 pots of funding, and you can imagine that for a meritorious application, it would be beneficial from an award perspective.
Thank you, Eileen. So can we select either SBIR or STTR for submittal? I think, Eileen, as a follow-up to your question, or your last answer, at the pitch phase, you are not asked whether or not you are applying for SBIR or STTR. That would be reserved for a full application, provided as a pitch is invited back to do so. So the good news is you don't have to decide right now. Please focus on answering those pitch questions, as well as, you know, outlining what a team may look like, provided you're able to submit a full proposal. And then if you are invited back, we would ask that you review the FAQs and the eligibility criteria to make sure your team would fit either SBIR or STTR specific requirements. At the full
Kelsey?
Oh, yeah, go ahead.
I'm sorry. If you want to finish what you're saying, I just forgot to fully answer the last question. So.
Oh, yeah, no problem. I was just going to say, you know, pitch stage, you don't have to choose. During the full application, if you're invited back, you will be able to select one or the other or both. So we suggest you review that information on the website. But Eileen, go ahead. Floor is yours.
I just wanted to address the question about how fleshed out the lab relationship needs to be. And I think, you know, it's fairly flexible. I mean, you certainly want to approach the lab, the national lab, talk to the relevant research team and decide that they are going to either help you or you're going to help move some of their technology out and commercialize it. But you don't have to have all the I's dotted and the T's crossed at that point in time. But a preliminary agreement to work together is sufficient, I would say, for the pitch.
Okay. What is your policy regarding using AI to draft a submission? Should we disclose that it was used as a resource? That is a great question, and we do have FAQs on that on the website, but I will also provide that at the pitch stage. There is a disclosure to say that whether or not you have used AI, as well as at the full application. It's not disqualifying to say that you have, but we do ask you to explain. Okay. Can company A submit 3 pitches to AMP, but also be a subcontractor on a pitch that company B primes?
I don't believe that is not allowed. So that would be an eligible scenario, but another panelist can correct me if that's wrong.
Okay. Let's see. For phase 1, the time is 6 to 12 months. If we're able to deliver the objectives in month 5 or month 9, do we have to wait for month 6 or month 12 to apply for phase 2?
So we'll have quite a bit more clarity as the start of phase 1 approaches with regards to what the timing of the entire project will look like across all the different milestones and exactly when in there you go from you would go from phase 1 to phase 2. You're definitely not locked into 6 or 12 months. 6 to 12 is meant to be a range. So it's we could see projects anywhere between 6 and 12 months. But again, when you move to phase 2 and when those opportunities will be along the course of your project will be shared in a little more time.
Do I need to be incorporated by the pitch application due date?
I can answer that question. No, and I'm glad you asked that question because I meant to raise that during my talk, but the truth is you do not have to be established as a small business at the point of the application, but you do need to be ready to go and you need to be ready to incorporate or form your LLC. By the time the award starts, you do need to be a nonprofit, a for-profit business. And so you need to have kind of your ducks in a row to be ready for that.
Okay. Is U.S. citizenship a requirement for a PI?
You have to have U.S. citizenship or you have to have permission to work in the United States. But no, not U.S. citizenship. A green card is pretty much typically what is minimally required to be a PI.
Does the pitch allow to add supporting documents like letter of support or letter of commitment? No, the pitch application does not allow for that yet. You are given a text box to describe what your team commitments look like. And if invited to submit a full application, that would be your opportunity to upload any supporting documents. If you would like a preview of what those supporting documents might look like, we would suggest you check out the Phase 2 opportunity page on our application hub, and they outline some of those uploads we will be looking for in a full application. Can you tell us about the supplemental bibliography and works cited pages? Are there any limitations or guides there? So I can start by just saying that is the one option for upload at the pitch stage. So Ben, it looks like you were about to say something. Can you provide a little more information about what you would be looking for?
Yeah, there's no particular requirements for that. It's really just a matter, we want to give you the opportunity to share any references or supporting references really for your pitch. Yeah, that's it.
If we want to request resources from NERSC or any RSC, is it required to be a submission with STTR?
Not at all. If you become an awardee, an SBR and STTR awardee, and you require NERSC resources, you should apply using the links provided.
Okay, we're getting some questions about funding. So this one specifically is what is suggested as an overhead rate, and talking about salary and wage. Ben, could you maybe give a little bit of insight into how these funds will be structured for this type of project?
I don't think I have a good answer to that one, unfortunately.
Okay.
Eileen, do you have any clarity on overhead rate, or can someone
No,
Or
because
maybe Felipe,
the
it looks like
different
Felipe was going to jump in.
structure. Yeah.
Yeah, I was going to say I could jump in on this because it's a milestone-based payment for a fixed price mechanism. Indirect rates are not applicable. We're not requesting a specific budget table or cost category allocation. We're strictly looking for performance. So as milestones are completed, the performance will be paid out. So indirect rates don't apply here.
Thank
Kelsey,
you.
just jumping into, we've had a number of questions. I'm not avoiding them, but just bringing it up for the OTC team, just pertaining to, obviously, I know everyone's excited. What's after the pitch stage? When are applications due? When are you going to make selections for that? When are the awards going to be made? When are we going to put on? So, are we able to, for the team, just speak overall, broadly speaking? Again, it's not that we are trying to omit any information from our website. As soon as the pitch pages are reviewed and evaluated, we will then reach out to those that have been selected, provide information on when those are due, and just Ben or Eileen, can you just speak to just overall, just it's not our intent to omit information, but we don't want to supply dates and that we don't have locked in at this time specific to those deadlines.
No, that's exactly right, Grayson. Thank you for saying that and clarifying. I wish I could sit here and commit to every date when we know everything, when everything will happen for the rest of the year. We're moving as fast as we can. Obviously, there's a lot of change in the SBIR program this year. It's all extremely exciting, and ConnectWorks has been doing an incredible job building a lot of this right now. It just means that at the onset, there's a little more uncertainty than normal around exactly when we expect to have different parts of the process done. So we're moving as fast as we can, and as soon as we can commit to dates, they will go on the website.
Thank you, Ben. Yeah, and again, our message to everyone is stay hyper-focused on September 10th at 2 p.m. Eastern, on or before that deadline. After evaluations are completed, you will be notified of your selection status and ultimately in AMP, and then be invited should you be selected for the next phase for a full application. Again, there's questions in here that we're seeing in chat around specifics to the application. Obviously, many of you are familiar with that. Again, all of those details will be provided in a similar format to this. We will have all of that updated information and provide that to you all as well. So we won't necessarily get in today on questions pertaining to uploads for that full application, as it doesn't necessarily pertain to the mass audience today. So thanks, Kelsey. Sorry. Thanks for allowing me to jump in again. I just saw a lot of these questions flying in, and not avoiding those. We're just not going to get into specifics on dates today.
No, thank you, Grayson. Question, does the Department of Energy seek partial or whole ownership of new IP developed during phase 1?
So we do not have ownership of your IP. The companies, SPIR and STTR funding is non-dilutive. You keep your intellectual property, you keep ownership of your company. We do not release any information which pertains to your that's appropriately marked in terms of your application and your technical reports. We will not release any information for 20 years after the completion of your last SBIR award. So the program is designed for you to keep your intellectual property. And that's one of the things that makes the program so great and super attractive to startups.
Says a question about phase 1. The slides say phase 1 is 2 to 300K, but also says up to 250K. Can you confirm the total allowable cost?
This is for phase 1. It is 250K is the award size for phase 1 for this opportunity. And we'll make sure that is consistent.
Yes, thank you. Can PI's appointment in the company be conditioned on granting the award, i.e., the PI will be employed greater than 51% when STTR is awarded?
Yes, that's acceptable.
Thank you. Will phase 1 awards be negotiated as fixed price? In other words, the small company can acquire all of the award funds during phase 1. This might be a Felipe question.
Yeah, I was bounced that to Felipe.
Way to throw me under the bus. And not entirely sure I fully understand the question. Again, it's milestone based for payment. So that 250K that you would be eligible for phase 1 is staged out over multiple milestones. And so as those milestones completed, you would be reimbursed for their completion. And then once you're approved to move from your phase 1 to phase 2, you'd have access to the other funding that again will be structured as milestone based payments.
Thank you. I think you did great from under the bus, Felipe. Does submitting a pitch now affect our eligibility for submitting during a regular SBIR round?
Nope. So every individual opportunity has a 3 pitch maximum. So you can submit 0, 1, 2, or 3 pitches for this opportunity. And for a future opportunity, you would get to submit 0, 1, 2, or 3 pitches.
Great, thank you. Are the Genesis phase 1 topics specific to a particular DOE office?
They are topics that were developed as part of the larger Genesis mission, and they are part the Genesis mission. These particular topics are housed within the Office of Science.
Thank you. Is there a teaming site where we can publish our organization's interest?
I think that is going to be a future capability.
Do you mean like partnering? I'm not exactly sure what the question is.
I believe we had said last week there is no intention to have like a teaming partner board at this time for this opportunity.
Right, for this particular opportunity, that's correct.
Yeah, unfortunately not right now, but that's something that we can potentially include in the future.
If you're interested in working in the national labs, I certainly recommend going to labpartnering.org.
Thank you, Eileen. Next question, is there a CUI requirement or all information should be treated as non-confidential, non-sensitive?
For the pitch, you should not include proprietary information in your pitch. That information is not protected. In the full application, you'll be marking information as proprietary, and that will be that information will be protected. but not for the pitch. We highly, strongly urge you not to include proprietary information in your pitch.
Great. We're still getting some questions in about UEI and cage codes. So it says, my firm has a UEI, but the SAM registration has lapsed. Can a project pitch still be submitted while the SAM renewal process plays out? So
All right,
I would
sorry
say-
about that. I was having trouble
it's okay.
unmuting. Yeah, you can submit the pitch. Your application, you cannot submit your application, is my understanding, unless your sam.gov has been refreshed and updated. But your pitch, yes, you may submit.
Yeah, from the AMP application's perspective, you will be prompted yes or no, do you have a UEI? And then if you do say no, you will be, prompted to then make sure you have one in time for a full application if you are invited, because in the full application, a UEI is required. Ben, you mentioned future opportunities. Are you referring to SBIRs for topics release 1 and 2?
All right, so we are moving away from the old release language. So we're really just thinking in terms of phases going forward. So there will be future opportunities. I don't think that's a secret. And what we've been saying is that there'll be a larger phase 1 opportunity released this fall. That's all we can really say so far in terms of future opportunities.
Ben, I
Okay.
did, just adding to that, I just moved a question in. Bear with me all. I can jump to it real quick. I thought it was important. Just talking about the new process. So if awarded after phase 1, will there be a separate phase 2 proposal, or would that be a milestone-based decision as mentioned in earlier notification?
Yeah, I can definitely clarify that. So it's somewhere in the middle. In the past, it has been an entirely new application, a new proposal process to apply for phase 2. And so we're modifying that. So you move between phases via a go, no-go decision point. At that point, there will still be some evaluation requirements. So think like a phase 2 plan or a commercialization pitch. There'll be some requirements. Those will be clearly outlined well in advance of any due date. But we'll be making the decision to move forward to the next phase via that no-go decision point based on those materials that we will receive.
How can I ensure my proposal is aligned to the program manager or the mission specifically? In other words, can I email a person to get feedback before submitting? So no, we suggest that you review the topics and materials that are posted on the opportunity page, as well as view last week's webinar where we were able to hear directly from the topic managers. If you have a specific question for topic managers, you are able to email the sbir@connectworks.org email address, and provided it's a general question, we will be able to get that information relayed back to you. Is this managed by ATI or by the Office of Technology Commercialization now? What is OSTI's role?
The SBIRS TTR program is managed by the Office of Technology Commercialization. As indicated before, ConnectWorks is a partner in helping us administer the application process. And the Office of Science was the administrator of the SBIR program, but the program has fully moved over to OTC at this point in time. The program offices are participating in the technical topics, but the administration of the program is within OTC.
Is phase 1 focused on an innovation concept or a semi-demonstrated new development?
Messaging is that phase 1 is for feasibility, some kind of feasibility. That can mean a lot of different things depending on your technology and your specific TRL and even the topic area. I don't know, Eileen, did you want to share more on how we're defining phase one?
I think what Ben said is correct. You want to be proposing and couching it as a feasibility. You're trying to make your technology do X, Y, or Z. If you already have a fairly well-developed technology, that's not a problem. But you want to be pivoting what your technology in some way to do something new, a new market, a new product. You cannot say, "Hey, I want to start manufacturing this thing that I've made," or "I want to start scaling up." That's not an appropriate phase one proposal. So think feasibility, think something new, some stretch goal for your technology, or a new idea. The idea can be in your head right now. As long as there's a great and novel idea, we're very interested in hearing it. But so there's a range of where you can be at in terms of your technology development, but it must be a feasibility study, phase one.
All right. Is it possible to change an STTR into an SBIR award in case I end my job at a university and enroll full-time at an LLC?
Not when you go from phase one to phase two or two to two, you can, but not in the middle of the award. The awards come from different pots of money. So we look at the pots of money and say, we apply the STTR funds to the STTR awards, SBR awards to the SBR awards. So once the award is made, you can't make that switch, but when you switch to a new phase, you may.
Are we required to have full ATI membership for our organization, including being a member of a consortium? At what point would this be required, if so? So this is not a requirement of the SBIR STTR program. You will be able to request access to the AMP portal, regardless of whether your company has membership or has requested access to a different ATI consortium. If we get phase one funding, when does phase one actually start? In other words, I'm curious when phase one would start and end.
So again, all these dates will go up as soon as we're confident in them. One of the benefits of how we're doing our new milestone-based approach and a lot of the new changes in the program is that we do expect to move pretty quickly. So once we announce a phase one winner, it won't be that long until you actually can start your reward. Of course, there's always variability. It could be months if things get delayed, but theoretically it could be very fast. But again, any more concrete than that, we just have to wait a little bit longer before we have more confidence in our dates.
Can DOE National Labs be co-participants in some way, for example, as a co-PI or a paid performer?
They can be a subcontractor. Remember, the award is always to the small business. That's the central tenet of the SBIR STTR program. The labs are contractors to your project. We pay the small business pays the labs for the work that they do. So there's no co-PIs in the SBIR program. There's just going to be one PI.
This question says, will the full proposals follow the conventional SBIR STTR guidelines?
Can you say that again? I'm not sure, unless Ben, you were going to answer.
I was going to ask for it as well. Yeah.
Will full proposals follow conventional SBIR STTR guidelines? Perhaps we can say what's different now that it's moved under OTC, if anything.
So we're still following all legislative requirements of the SBIR, STTR program, all SBA requirements. There's a lot of scrutiny and there are a lot of expectations and a lot of requirements that we get at DOE from all kinds of entities above us. And all of those guidelines are still fully followed. So any proposal application that you submit, any project that you execute, you would expect that ultimately they would still meet the general SBIR program guidelines.
Thank you. And we are nearly at time, so I might just use this as an opportunity to say if we did not get to your questions today, we will be posting resources to the application hub where we go through and we consolidate the answers from DOE, from the topic managers. We'll be posting up this resource later this week, but then also up from using questions from the previous week's webinar, as well as updating it periodically to capture the questions from this week's webinar as well. You're always welcome to email sbir@connectworks.org for your question, but please reserve that for new questions because we will be going through the Q&A report from this webinar and getting answers to all of the questions that we did not have time to cover live. But thank you guys for your time today. Ben, Eileen, if you have any last parting words?
Thank you for attending, everyone.
Yeah, huge thanks to attending. I'm glad to get to answer some questions today.
Thank you, everyone.